Adventure Church in Mill Creek, Washington. And in this segment, we have just been having the opportunity to get to know people in our area, different pastors, leaders, public figures, hearing about their faith journey, a little bit about their life and what they do. And today we have the awesome privilege of having a good friend of mine and a mentor of mine in Tyler Sollie with us. Tyler, how you doing, man?
Hey, doing good, man. So fun to hang out with you today.
It's always good to see you.
Yeah.
Good to catch up. And I was joking before, but I'm going to need to find that hat in Olympia. I want to come there.
Yeah, this is honestly my favorite hat. I feel like I see photos of me and I'm like, man, I wear that hat a lot. But I love it. You know how it is. There's certain hats that you just love how they feel and look. And this is that hat for me. And, you know, Olympia Coffee, they opened up a shop in Tacoma a couple of years back, and just great coffee, really cool vibe. And
nice.
So
we'll tell them to keep making their way north.
Yeah. Okay.
Go north.
We'll do.
We'll get there. We'll get up to Mill Creek one day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Tyler, you are obviously a pastor. You've been in the area for a long time, a few different churches. You worked with the network for a little while, the Assemblies of God network. But really, we want to get to know you. Would you just share with us a little bit about your faith journey, a little bit about your upbringing, kind of your faith story, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely. So my journey, actually, it starts in Tacoma, and it's crazy all these years later to be kind of back where it all started. Because my parents actually, they met at this church back in the 70s called Life Center. And so I grew up kind of in this city. My parents, they met at church. They just incredible Jesus followers. And they really kind of modeled the way both for my older sister and myself, just what it is to follow Jesus and to serve him. And we weren't like a quote unquote, like vocational ministry family, right? Yeah. We were at church a lot though. Like we were that family. My dad,
number one serving team.
That's my dad, painting contractor, owned his own company for years and years and years. But man, every time like the church doors were open, Sunday morning, back in the day, I don't know if any people remember this, but like back in the day, we had like Sunday night church, which was, it was different than Sunday morning church. And then we had Wednesday night church, and it was just like the rhythm of our life. And so for us, I grew up in an environment very much where Jesus wasn't like this elective, like sport, like you kind of do it on the side. It's an attachment to your life, but it's not really the centerpiece. And so that, I think that was kind of foundational and definitely formative for me. But also I can remember clearly like times in junior high and high school, getting ready for school, walking upstairs. It's early in the morning. I'm going to go eat breakfast. And I'd walk past our living room, and my dad would be in the living room, either reading his Bible or on his knees, like praying. Wow. And something stuck like in my teenage mind, like, oh, this is real to him. Like he wasn't doing it to show us, you know, it was like, this was his real journey. Yeah. And so that was formative for me. Wow. And when I was at a summer camp in, I think it was like mid junior high. So like probably 7th grade summer camp. Right. And there's like the altar moment, Cedar Springs. Come on. You know about Cedar Springs.
Come on. Glory.
Come on. And, you know, I remember just really sensing like God's presence in such a real way. And I was down kind of at the altar area praying, and I felt this just tug in my heart, like, Tyler, I want you to be a youth pastor. And I didn't know what that meant. I was like, sweet. Wow, let's do it. And so that was kind of definitely a big part of my journey, because it set me on some rails of knowing kind of where my life was headed at a young age.
That's good.
Now, did that mean that I was perfect? Absolutely not. And just kind of the journey of church being something kind of I did, to actually becoming like a true follower of Jesus, man, that was a journey for me. And I remember different times just sensing God's presence, and it always felt real. But I knew at some level God had put this dream in my heart, this call in my heart to serve as a youth pastor. And so that's kind of where I aimed my life at. And ended up going to Northwest University after I graduated high school. Back then it was called Northwest College.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, back in the day. And ended up serving at this church on the east side of Seattle in a city called Issaquah, Washington, and just started helping out at this church called Eastridge. And I was just a volunteer, but man, loved it, loved working with students. And as a volunteer, ended up kind of taking over the junior high Sunday school and just kind of pouring in. And oh man, it was the time of my life.
Anyone that serves in junior high ministry for more than a year deserves extra jewels in the crown.
For real. But I couldn't believe that they were going to let me do this and be a part of it, Yeah. So I was just happy for the opportunity, and learned so much. And basically, long story short, ended up coming on staff there right as I was graduating college. So came on staff in 2002 and served there on staff for over 10 years. So including the time I was in college, I was there for 14 years. Wow. And awesome. Just incredible things happened, after graduating. I met Amber when I was over in Yakima. We got married. But I remember one of the most important parts of my faith journey was actually years into ministry. And we were on vacation. We were in Eastern Washington one summer getting some sun. And one of my friends had recommended me to read the book Prodigal God by Tim Keller. And I'm reading this book, and it's just, in a good way, it's just kind of messing with me, And I closed the book, and I remember looking over at Amber, and I don't even know if we might have had Judah at this point. So this might be like 05, 06,
just graduating
something out of that range. And I looked at Amber and I said, I think I just got saved. And as crazy as that sounds, I know I didn't believe that theologically. I knew that I was already saved, but it was like God in his grace was removing another layer of the onion for me. Yeah, and my faith was becoming more clarified. And I realized, man, for so long, I think what I had a lot of moralism. I had a lot of American Christianity, but what I was beginning to discover was the gospel, the pure good news of what Jesus has done for me, what I could never do for myself. And I saw myself in so many different places within that book that I was reading, right? He really talks about it. We've for so long focused on the younger brother who kind of wasted everything and squandered everything. But Jesus starts out that whole story saying a father had two sons. And I realized, man, there's been times where I've been the wasteful kid. There's been times that I've been kind of the religious kid, the kid who was all about moralism. And so I remember as a youth pastor at that point, having to repent about some of the messages that I used to preach, or even some of the things that would come out of my mouth, right? Because I used to say things like, hey, we're going to do this outreach event. We should probably preach a gospel message. And through that journey, I realized, man, what else do we have besides the gospel, right? What do we have unless it's just our own wisdom and we're trying to encourage kids to be good kids, right? I remember preaching stuff like 10 reasons why you shouldn't date or whatever. And just stupid stuff where I had to go back.
We're all guilty. We're all guilty of that.
We're all guilty. Yeah. There's grace at the foot of the cross, right? But I look back at that and I'm like, I didn't need Jesus to preach that message.
Yeah.
I didn't need, and I would always figure out a way to fit it in at the very end. So here's 10 reasons why you shouldn't date. And so if you need to give your heart to God tonight, and it's what? How do these things actually connect? And obviously scripture has so much wisdom for how we live and orchestrate lives, but it's never disconnected from the central truth of the gospel message. And for me, it was like my eyes got opened up, and I realized, man, for all these years, I've been a follower of Jesus. I've been a Christian, but I feel like I've missed so much of what this thing really has always been about, and is always about, and will be always about, you know? So that was part of my journey. And I think that was a significant part of the journey for me, for sure.
That's a great story, man. I love the fact that it was in Yakima too, of all places.
Right.
Yeah. God's gift to the world, right there in Yakima.
Well, actually, so when I was reading the book, we were at a place called Potholes Reservoir. We were like,
oh yeah,
camping. You know where that's at?
Oh
okay,
yeah,
yeah. So we were desperate for sun and heat. So yeah, we went over there.
as the West Siders so often are, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So, dude, you were at East. I didn't know you were at Eastridge for 14 years. That's wild, man.
Yeah, I was on staff for 10. We transitioned in 2012 and took a role. We were executive pastors at Stone Church, and then came to the Northwest Ministry Network, served as network youth directors for a number of years, and then we crazy, like full circle of life, right? We ended up coming back to Tacoma, and that was a little over 5 years ago. So we've been back in Tacktown for 5 years.
Come on. Dude, tell me a little something about what you learned in 14 years of being at one church, and just this idea of longevity and consistency, especially in serving in youth ministry. I mean, you got to see three full classes of high school students graduating. That's wild.
Yeah, it was the craziest experience watching kids come in as sixth graders. So you know Josh and Brittany Taylor.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh.
So like I remember both of them coming in as sixth graders, coming all the way through junior high, all the way through high school, graduating, serving on our youth staff, falling in love, doing their wedding, right? So that's such a rare gift and experience to have moments like that. And obviously sometimes, we can't always be at a place long term.
Yeah.
So even when we're out of place for a short term, I believe you can still have a long-term heart.
Oh, that's really good.
But there was moments that were so significant during that season, and I was just trying to learn and understand and grow. And Pastor Steve Jameson took a risk on some knucklehead like me, but I look back and I'm like, man, I'm so thankful for those moments and those opportunities. And I would say probably the biggest takeaway of being someplace, on staff for 10 years, I realized that at times there's confusion between, is it time to go or is it time to grow? And I think what kept me there long was the moments where I kind of felt this wrestle in my spirit, like, man, I wonder if it's time for me to move on. I wonder if it's time for me to, am I feeling this way because it's time to transition? And I remember different times praying through that and just really feeling the Holy Spirit challenge me, saying, you need to understand the difference between when I say go and when I say grow. And because there's some things that won't be developed in us, and there's some things that won't grow in us unless we keep our roots planted for long enough to kind of experience different seasons. And it's not just seasons, there's different cycles and different years that bring about different realities in the seasons. So that was probably like the biggest takeaway. The blessing obviously is just seeing the journey of kids and kind of their process and becoming adults, and those people becoming like friendships, and the relationship that we have with Josh and Carrie Jameson, who we served with for so long there. Josh was with me there for 7 years, and now thank goodness he's fixed all the mess that I left behind. He's just killing it. But those long-term relationships, man, that's what makes ministry rich, because we know it. Like, people often say ministry can be lonely, but I'm convinced ministry is lonely as we choose it to be. And so leaning in and finding those relationships, finding those friendships, and sometimes that takes time.
Yeah. honestly, I reflect often about how critical Tony and Ariel Matar have been for Nicole and I, and just,
Mm-hmm.
the partnership that we've had in ministry, together, and even now stepping out of youth ministry, that we still have that foundation of friendship, working together,
Right.
living life together. It's so huge.
Yeah. And
But
you've been at Canyon how long? Or not Canyon, I'm sorry. You guys changed the name of your church
the artist
recently.
formerly known as Canyon Creek,
Yes.
now Venture Church. Yeah.
Venture. I can't believe I did that.
No, you are totally fine, because I still do it on Sunday mornings when I'm hosting.
Yes.
So we have a dollar jar, and I got like at least $100 in there.
That's so funny. Yeah.
But no,
Venture
we've been at just did it. We've been at Venture for about 12 years now. So
amazing.
Yeah, I've been there
Amazing.
a minute. So I got to ask, do you miss youth ministry as much as I do? Because I miss it a lot. I don't know.
That is such a good question. I remember the first year, like stepping out of youth ministry, and I literally, this is just me and you, so I feel like I can be transparent, right?
Just me and you. It's not gonna be posted anywhere.
Yeah, I literally felt like a drug addict. Like I would sneak down on Wednesday night and like kind of look over the edge and like just check out what was going on in youth ministry, because like a part of my heart I felt like was dying, right? But here's what I've come to find, like all these years later. I'm still a youth pastor on the inside.
Right. Yeah.
Like, and I look at, whether it's the different roles that I've served in, at the network, or leading one of our campuses, or now serving as the senior pastor. When you work with adults after you've worked with youth for a long, long time, you realize like humans are humans. I mean, there's unique things, there's nuances, but man, I look at it and I'm like, at the end of the day, adults just have like more money, and the ripple effects of their decisions are a little bit more intense.
Yeah.
But you're dealing it just right now. I mean, let's be honest, you still feel like you're 17, right?
Oh, bro. I mean, absolutely. My body doesn't, but my spirit.
Yeah, your body doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about that this morning. I went for a run with a friend, and like inside in my mind, I'm like, dude, I got this. We're running Chambers Bay, which has some wicked hills.
Oh yeah.
And like, we start going up the switchbacks, and I'm like, I don't got this. Like my body, is just like, Tyler, you're 40. Stop. What are you doing? Stop. But that dynamic of, on the inside, like I talk to our youth pastors all the time, and I'm like, man, this is the greatest ministry. Like, give your life to this. Stay in youth ministry as long as you can. Stay in youth ministry as long as you can.
I have this clip of Adam Sandler, I think it's Billy Madison, shaking that kid's face, just saying, stay here as long as you can. That's like what I feel like when I talk to every pastor.
Yeah, it's so true. And but on the other side of it though, now I look back and I'm like, man, I'm still a youth pastor on the inside. Like a few weeks ago, I dropped my son off for youth when they were still meeting, right? Before the quarantine.
Right.
And so I'm like, hey, see you later. And I go park my car, and I walk up like through the back way in the balcony. And I'm just like, I'm hanging, and I'm just like up in the balcony, like watching, going, man, I miss youth ministry.
Right. Oh no, I totally relate.
Still on the inside.
There's probably 2 Wednesdays a month where I tell Nicole before we leave the office, like, hey babe, I'm slammed with work. I think I'm gonna have to stay late tonight. But I'm not working. I'm literally making excuses so I can stick around a little longer. It's you can take the man out of youth ministry, but you can't take the youth ministry out of the man.
So true. Yeah.
So you were youth pastor for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Stepped into this role of kind of overseeing, serving youth pastors as the network district youth director, or network youth. I don't know. Can't even remember what it's called.
Something like that. Yeah. Network youth director, I think.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
that one. And then And then you come back full circle, right? You come back, you take over. Did you launch a Rainier campus? You launched a separate campus as a part of your church, or you took over a campus?
Yeah, so it's more complex than that.
I
So
was trying to figure, I was trying to
yeah,
remember.
yeah, a little over 5 years ago, we came to Tacoma and joined the staff, and we took over a campus that had been planted about a year and a half earlier. It was a mobile campus, so set up, tear down, like the whole deal.
Oh yeah.
And so that was called Life Center Baker because we met at Baker Middle School. And 11 months later, we moved Baker south into a permanent building. There was a church there that is kind of walking through their own crisis, and reach out to Life Center. We started journeying with them. Through that process, they asked to come under our umbrella. And so instead of just launching a separate campus that was a little bit south of us, we decided to take Baker and bring that together. And that became Life Center Rainier. And so that was 4 years ago. It's crazy to think about.
It is weird that it was 4 years.
Yeah.
And so now, just recently, in the past year and a half, you have transitioned, and now you're the lead pastor at the Central Campus, correct?
Yep. So,
I got that right.
I
got that part right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, two really big transitions in not a whole lot of time.
Mm-mm.
Tell me what you've learned, maybe both about yourself and maybe just leading in general, from stepping into a place where there was two different people leading before you and kind of beginning to implement your vision, your DNA, and just stepping into those roles. What was that experience like for you? What did you learn about yourself?
That's a really good question.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
I would say there's some unique characteristics to some of those transitions in that they all were centered around kind of a season of crisis, which I think creates a little bit of a nuanced approach. There's certain things I think in our leadership muscle or our leadership framework that if everything was healthy and everything was normal, you probably step in a certain way. But when you're kind of walking in and you're trying to figure out what's what, and your goal really is to heal the heart. And one of those things is more of like a triage situation where you're not worried about the right arm right now. You're just trying to keep the heart pumping. That takes a little bit different leadership. And so I think for myself, I've learned a lot of things, to be honest, and I'm still learning every day because transition doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen clean. Just because you are in a new seat or you have a new title, it doesn't mean that everybody's with you yet. Doesn't mean that you don't have to uproot some things. It doesn't mean that you don't have to have some really hard conversations. But you're trying to balance like leading a staff and healing the heart of a congregation. And sometimes when you hold, and one of the ways I talked about it when some of this was all kind of happening, I said, with one hand, you kind of have this like fire hose and you're trying to put out fires. The other hand, you have like blueprints and you're trying to draw plans for what the future should look like. Wow. And those two things feel radically different. And it's hard because you're trying to vision forward and you're trying to heal people with where they're at.
Right. Wow.
You're trying to think about what the future holds, but you're working through your own emotions and your own pain and your own like, wow. And God, are you sure? We've all, in leadership, we've probably all had those conversations with God, like,
you want me to do what?
You sure you got the right guy? I know a lot of people who are probably better suited than myself, but I think some of the things that I've learned is, man, the church is resilient. The body of Christ is resilient.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important for us to understand as spiritual leaders, specifically that sacred trust that we have with people, that we are stewarding something important. But kind of back to your question, like, what are some of the leadership lessons that I've learned? Get ready to be misunderstood.
Wow.
It's not your job to try to prove to everybody, because not everybody's going to love who you are, what you're doing, how you're doing it. And people will misunderstand your motive. People will try to apply things. They'll try to interpret your why by just looking at what you're doing or how you're doing it. That's good. And so that's not always fair, but if you're going to be a leader, you give up your right to always have to have the fair thing, you know? So, I remember as I was walking through one of those seasons, reading a book by, my mind's going to draw a blank right now, Sam Chand, and it's called Leadership Pain. I don't know if you've read that book.
Oh yeah, dude. Great.
And we're journeying through it, and I literally had to set the book down because it was too real in the moment. Yeah. And it was just like, I can't finish this book right now because of the pain that we're walking through, right? And I just heard Craig Rochelle say recently, the level of leadership that we're kind of able to walk in is directly correlated to the level of pain that we're willing to endure. And I both simultaneously love that quote and hate that quote at the same time, right? Because none of us wake up in the morning going, man, I hope today is painful. But sometimes the assignment of leadership, and listen, it has a lot of blessings. So this is not like a poor me, or, oh man, let's get Tyler some more sunshine because he seems kind of depressed with his black hat, black shirt on. But that dynamic of it, if we're going to be faithful, right? Jesus said, take up your cross. And so there's going to be a level in this journey, even though there's so much blessing, so much great joy, so many beautiful things that come through it. Transition, at times it's going to bring some pain with it.
Yeah. That's so good. That's so good. Thanks for being real, man. And you know what I love about that is that even as I'm just thinking about who might be watching this, leadership looks different in all, I mean, there's leadership everywhere, it's not just in the church. And I think of so many business owners or entrepreneurs or, leaders and managers who are facing some of those same things. And that's just such great perspective, not just for church leaders, but just for everyone, the idea of looking forward to the future and tending to what is necessary in the moment, I think is something that is, I've never had to deal with it on a level that you have, but I mean, I can't think of maybe a more important leadership aspect to understand and learn and to walk through. That's really cool to hear about, man. One of the things I really just appreciate about you, Tyler, and I'm not just, sitting here trying to fluff your feathers, but honestly, whenever we get the opportunity to talk, I feel like you just are able to give wisdom, and I really appreciate that about you. I appreciate that about the times we get to connect, and felt like a fire hose of wisdom and knowledge bombs, and just like those, like, I got saved all over again moments when I read your book that you just put out. Really just loved it because it began to address a question that I think everyone asks and everyone's thinking about, but no one is really aware of how to acknowledge it or where to go with the questions that they're asking. And I wanted to give you an opportunity just to share a little bit about the book you just put out and how we might be able to track it down and find it.
Yeah. So it's called The Promise and the Process. And the subtitle, I think I'll say this correctly, is How to Hang On to Hope and Grow Through the Journey. And really the whole idea of the book actually started back in like January of 2013. I was doing a little leadership talk with some school of ministry students. And as I was preparing for that, I had been studying the life of Joseph in the book of Genesis. And I saw some parallels with him being 17 when he was kind of given this dream, and how often even myself in my early years of ministry, I made these assumptions like, okay, God, you gave me that vision. That means tomorrow, right? Yeah. And it wouldn't happen tomorrow. And I'm like, God, what's going on? You kind of spoke to me like you got to live up to your end of the deal. Yeah. And so I kind of developed this map of looking at Joseph's life in the book of Genesis, and kind of took that to begin to teach these young people at that point, like, listen, even though the promise is real, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen overnight. Yeah. And often God will take you through a process that will actually prepare you to walk in the promise. Yeah. And that's how he's going to grow you. That's how he's going to prepare you. So for Joseph, the process, and this is kind of how the book is framed, it goes promise. And we would think that the promise just goes straight to palace, right? But in Joseph's life, it goes promise, pit, pressure, prison, palace. And so many people watching right now are going, amen, right? I mean, that's the journey. And, you know, thankfully, God doesn't reveal every detail to us and kind of reveal what we're actually signing up for. Because I wonder how many of us would just be like,
nope.
But I love this story because Joseph, when he's 17, when he receives that dream, he assumes that it's all about him. He thinks the palace is all about him.
Right.
And then the next stop for him, and I'll just kind of fly through it really quick, but the next stop for him, he's sent to go visit his brothers. His brothers are tired of him. He's the favorite child. He got this special, you know, colorful coat from his dad. They take his coat from him, throw him in a pit. They're going to fake his death. Instead, one of the brothers goes, no, I got a better idea. Let's sell him. Right. So like, okay. And this is why I'm thankful that I only have an older sister, right? Not older brothers, but so this moment for Joseph, he's now in the bottom of this pit. And I think many people, like, we experience those pit moments. I think a lot of people right now, this pandemic, it feels like a pit moment. Being isolated at home, it feels like a pit moment. And if we're not careful, we begin to believe lies in the bottom of the pit. Like, has God forgotten about me? Am I alone? You know, is maybe the promise wasn't real. And then all of a sudden you fast forward the tape, and I picture, you know, all of a sudden this rope kind of gets thrown into the pit, and Joseph's kind of like, that's funny, guys, you know, like talking to his older brothers, like, man, thanks for the joke. And he comes up to the top, and all of a sudden he's being sold as a slave. And he goes from that pit moment down to Egypt. He's sold as a slave to Potiphar, and he serves in his house. And I mean, powerful guy in the Egyptian government. And I wonder at one level if he's looking around going, well, maybe this is the palace. Maybe I've arrived. Oh. But all of a sudden, Potiphar's wife takes notice of him, starts paying attention to him, and he experiences pressure because she wants to hook up with him. And his response is interesting. He says, how could I do that wicked thing and sin against my God? He doesn't say, how could I sin against Potiphar? How could I jeopardize my career? How could I do this? How could I? And what's interesting about those pressure moments is pressure moments reveals what's on the inside. Yeah. If you ever squeeze out a sponge, right? I mean, it reveals what's on the inside. And I think for a lot of us right now, we're feeling the pressure and stuff's being squeezed out of us. How we react to our kids, how we react to our spouse, how we, you know, go off on social media right now. Like it's a revealing of what's going on the inside. And we see what's on the inside of Joseph. And you wonder how much of that was forged in that pit, how much of that was forged in the journey down to Egypt, how much was forged kind of in his time serving in Potiphar's house. And so here's a kid, he did nothing wrong. He gets falsely accused and he ends up in prison now. So it's, you got to kind of be watching this as Joseph going, okay, God, you gave me a dream. And I thought like the pit and maybe the pressure was enough, but now prison?
Right.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And, but here's what we learn about the prison moments is God knows how to bring favor even in unexpected places.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's unique about this moment right now as we navigate the pandemic of COVID-19. And God knows how to bring favor in unexpected places. And God was growing Joseph through each stop of the way. Joseph was learning something about the character of God in the pit. He was learning some stuff about himself when he was under pressure. He was learning some needed administrative skills while he was in prison. Why? Well, in a few chapters, we're about to see him show up in the palace as Egypt is facing a famine. And all of those administrative skills that God had been working in him, now all of a sudden he looks at the situation and he walks into the palace, and it's not that 17-year-old mindset anymore. That's, hey, it's all about me. It's through that journey that he realizes, man, God used all that to grow and prepare me. And so the palace is never about us. It's always about the salvation and preservation of other people. So that's kind of where the book ends. So
yeah, and it is, and I love the way that even you just tagged on a couple ways that those kind of instances correlate with even what we're experiencing now, because that's what I experienced as I read the book too. I was just like, man, I feel like anyone who has gone on any type of journey can correlate their life with what's happening within this story.
Yeah.
And I would just really encourage you, go check it out. The Process and the Promise in the Process.
Yeah. Promise in the Process. Yeah.
And check it out. It's on Amazon, right?
Yeah, it's on Amazon.
Yeah.
So you can get paperback or Kindle, but yeah, it's on Amazon.
Well, go check it out. Tyler, can we end with some rapid fire questions?
Absolutely, man. I've been looking forward to this moment.
The best way to get to know a person is by hearing their faith story and then asking them a series of questions that really don't matter at all. But I feel like it's the most genuine way to find out about a person.
Love it.
So here we go. Rapid questions. If you could own any animal as a pet, what would it be?
Oh my goodness, a koala bear.
Oh, I don't think that one's been taken yet, but that's I like that. Celebrity you would most want to sit down with for lunch with?
Oh my goodness, celebrity?
Or just person of interest?
Famous person. Living?
Doesn't have to be.
Doesn't have to be. If it doesn't have to be, I'd say Martin Luther King Jr. Just the courage, the commitment. To me, amazing. The legacy, how it continues to speak. Living. So I'll throw out a living one. Let's see here. Celebrity. Probably Russell Wilson or something.
I knew you were going to pick Russell.
I
don't know what it was.
Yeah.
I just felt it. I
felt it. Football.
Right. Yeah. Snack that is currently in your pantry that you want to eat?
Tortilla chips.
Just straight, no salsa, just straight tortilla chips.
Guacamole and salsa.
Salsa and chips, that's my guilty pleasure right there.
Yeah, it's good.
All right. If you could binge watch only one TV show for the rest of your life, what would it be?
The Office.
Yep. Come on. Song that will get you on the dance floor.
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. Song that will get me.
Jesus freak, isn't it?
Yeah, probably some old school DC Talk. So in high school, college, I was super into punk rock, like super into punk rock. I still am. So like that's kind of what I
respect for you.
That's what I listen to.
I'm not even gonna lie.
When I'm not listening to worship.
Right. My playlist consists of Hillsong, Elevation Worship, and All American Rejects. Right.
There you go. Yeah.
One thing you collect.
One thing I collect, books. Kind of? No. Let's see here. What do I collect? Bikes.
Oh, yes. Tyler Sollie.
I don't know. Does three bikes count as a collection though?
That's kind of weird. Those things are like those are like a big item. So I would say 3.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Sunrises or sunsets?
Sunsets on the Pacific Ocean. End of day.
Nothing. Yeah. High school GPA.
3.4.
Respect.
Maybe 3.2. I think maybe I graduated with honors. What level is honors? I don't know.
Bro, you're asking the wrong guy if we're talking about
honors. College I thrived in. So I actually graduated college cum laude. Which I don't know what that means. I just got this like gold rope to wear. So like that was
I don't know what the different rules are, but the more things you get to put around the back your neck, the better, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're Hawaiian, and then you get more than everyone else.
Yeah, just stacked up.
Yeah, I always wanted to be Hawaiian just for that. Okay, person who makes you laugh the most.
Oh man, that is probably Darius Giles.
Oh gosh, Darius Giles. Shout out Darius Giles right now. He is hilarious.
Like that dude, he can just like say something to me and I will lose it. Like he is just so stinking funny to me.
You never know. You never know what.
You never know literally what's going to come out of his mouth.
All right, last question. Thing you are most thankful for?
Definitely family. I mean, obviously outside of the grace of Jesus, and at the expense of sounding cliche, I look at all of the running and urgency in life and all of the busyness and the things that we think that actually matter. And as I slow down and I look at my kids laugh, as I slow down and look at the stuff that they're thinking about and creating, as I see different characteristics in them that they've gained from me, both for the good and the bad, like I look at them and I'm like, man, this is such a gift.
I love it. Yeah. Well, friends, that's my friend Tyler Sollie. Tyler, thanks for hanging out with us today, man. Stick around
Absolutely.
Just for a second. But that's another episode of Let's Get Real. Tyler Sollie from Life Center Church in Tacoma. Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks.